What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the MMA Fast. Today, let's get started with Joe Pyfer shares his blueprint to finding success against Khamzat Chimaev. Joe Pyfer believes there is a key game plan to give Khamzat Chimaev fits. Pyfer has been rising up the middleweight rankings, and his stock has never been higher after stopping former 185-pound king Israel Adesanya at UFC Seattle. Pyfer could eventually find himself in a title fight, and he'll be keeping a close eye on the UFC 328 main event between Chimaev and Sean Strickland. Chimaev has looked mostly dominant throughout his pro MMA career. He captured the UFC middleweight championship from Dricus du Plessis by securing nearly 22 minutes of control time. I think you have to obviously do your due diligence on your wrestling and understand that the only thing he's going to throw out in the beginning is to set up that initial takedown. He wants to wrestle early so he can fatigue you. And if you're super disciplined for, I would say, probably for like the first 10 minutes of that fight where you're just ready for that shot and you're just throwing everything up the middle and changing levels with him where you're staying low and you're staying grounded so he doesn't get a chance to get under you, I think that you have a very, very good chance to win it. Duncan explains why he's absolutely ecstatic to face Renato Moicano at UFC Vegas 115. Duncan is pumped to be facing Renato Moicano, despite them being teammates. Duncan and Moicano both train at American Top Team and have trained with each other in the past. Yet they will headline UFC Vegas 115 on Saturday in a pivotal fight at lightweight. I feel like I get to express myself a little bit better with the 5 rounds. He's obviously a fantastic opponent. Unfortunately, he's a teammate, but I'm absolutely ecstatic to be stepping across the octagon in front of him. The actual caliber of opponents he's had in the past. Aldo, Makhachev, the resume is insane. I'm not thinking any further into the future. Moicano on Saturday, home on Sunday. That's all I've got planned. As Duncan said, he knows beating Moicano does a lot for his career, and he has an immense amount of respect for him. Obviously, we all know the game plan for myself, and we all know the game plan for him. He's gonna try to take me down, TKO me, or submit me. Henry Cejudo claims Justin Gaethje beating Ilia Topuria would be bigger upset than Sean Strickland beating Israel Adesanya. Topuria is set to face Gaethje in a lightweight title fight at UFC White House in June. Given Topuria's incredible resume, there aren't many who believe that Gaethje has what it takes to snatch the lightweight title away from the reigning champion. Given the odds, Cejudo believes that if Gaethje pulls off an upset, it would be bigger than when Strickland beat Adesanya to win the middleweight title. However, Strickland surprised fans by dominating their 5-round encounter and winning by unanimous decision. Ilia is the current number 2 pound-for-pound fighter right now. If Justin Gaethje is truly able to take out a 2-division champion who's undefeated and could potentially fight for a 3rd title. Not just that, if you go talent for talent, Ilia Topuria versus Israel Adesanya. If we look at their fight styles, Ilia Topuria is way more well-rounded than Israel Adesanya. So yeah, Justin Gaethje defeating Ilia Topuria would be bigger than Sean Strickland beating Israel Adesanya. Who should Conor McGregor fight next? Jon Anik shares 3 huge options. Conor McGregor's next fight is the one topic that everyone has an opinion on. The Irishman hasn't fought since losing to Dustin Poirier in 2021, but has spoken of a comeback in the last few months. McGregor was scheduled to fight Michael Chandler in 2024, but the fight was canceled after the Irishman sustained an injury. There seemed to be several options for McGregor, and Jon Anik had his say during an episode of Submission Radio. Anik was asked if Nate Diaz was the biggest fight for McGregor, and while the UFC commentator agreed, he believed that the Stockton star wasn't keen on a trilogy. I think it is the biggest fight. I think it makes a lot of sense, but I think Nate Diaz was on Theo Von recently, and maybe was suggesting that that's not the fight that he is looking for, and I think that's a little bit refreshing. Anik suggested that Diaz was keen on facing a different opponent, maybe someone who was competitive for him. However, Anik had 2 options for McGregor. The 2 names in his mind were Max Holloway and Charles Oliveira. I would really like to see that, but the Charles Oliveira fight makes a lot of sense as well. To me, Charles and Conor for the BMF belt makes a lot of sense. Holloway makes a lot of sense. But yeah, the biggest fight is for Nate, even if Nate's not of a competitive nature for it right now. Charles Oliveira welcomes Nate Diaz fight amid Stockton natives' rant. Charles Oliveira is aware of recent comments from Nate Diaz, and he's open to sharing the octagon with the fan-favorite veteran. Diaz recently spoke to Theo Von, and as expected, he didn't mince words. The Stockton native discussed a slew of topics, including why he didn't want a Conor McGregor trilogy right away. In an interview with Canal Encarada, Oliveira responded to Diaz's comments, understanding that it's part of the game to sell a potential fight. I told my coach Diego Lima that this is the moment for us to think carefully about what's going to happen. Would a fight with Nate be good? Of course, course, definitely. Given everything he's been saying, he's a guy who sells a lot, someone who would help us make money. It would be a big fight, and a lot of people would want to see it. There's also Conor McGregor talking. So honestly, I'm very sure that the most important thing is understanding the game, understanding what the UFC wants, to see if it's good for us too, because it has to be good for both sides. Oliveira last competed in the UFC 326 main event back in March. He defeated Max Holloway via unanimous decision to capture the BMF title. Alex Pereira goes nuclear on Melk Costa for picking Jon Jones to beat Poatan in potential showdown. Alex Pereira recently sounded off on Melk Costa for picking Jon Jones to beat him in a potential fight. For context, Costa recently shared his thoughts on a potential Pereira versus Jones matchup and pointed out that it would be an interesting clash of styles. In a comment on Instagram, the rising Brazilian featherweight wrote, "Never ask me a question thinking I will stay on top of the wall. If this fight happens, it will be two goats fighting, the best striker versus the best grappler. And yeah, I think Jon Jones would win." It appears Pereira wasn't happy about Costa's prediction and responded to his comment with one of his own. Poatan brought Costa's past interactions with him and wrote, "Bro, you root for whoever you want, and it's all right. When I was at LFA and you were going to fight the day before, and you came and turned your phone on my face when I was drinking coffee and I was chewing, you didn't even ask if you could. I thought you weren't mad because we were having dinner together in Mexico, and I was giving you strength because you were crying, because you lost the fight. And now when you win 2 fights, you're the almighty. Bro, I can lose 8 matches in a row." UFC analyst says Conor McGregor for sure won't fight Max Holloway. Chael Sonnen expects Conor McGregor to draw a real welterweight in his UFC return. UFC CEO Dana White is confident that Conor McGregor will make his long-awaited comeback this year. There have been rumblings of Max Holloway potentially being his opponent, but Sonnen doubts that. Instead, he suggested Ian Gary, who's currently vying for a title shot against UFC welterweight champion Islam Makhachev. Carlos Prates claimed McGregor turned him down, which would fall in line with the type of opponent Sonnen thinks McGregor will face. I'm confident in telling you for sure it won't be Max, because the only thing that I know about the Conor fight is that it will not be lower than 170 pounds. Max doesn't fight at 170, and I know he says, "I would go up for that fight." But the mere fact that he would go up for that fight is the very reason you don't need to do that fight. I think Conor's probably going to get dealt right from the bottom of the deck. They're probably going to bring in a hammer like Ian Gary, and even if it's not Ian Gary, I think it will be someone like Ian Gary, a young guy with some shelf life and somebody we all know. It doesn't have to be. He could take any opponent, and it's going to do really great, but I think he's going to get a stud. It's going to be a main event, there's going to be a lot of money, and generally that's going to attract a pretty good dance partner. If it is Machado Gary, Sonnen sees McGregor having a hard time, but won't completely count him out. It's going to be very difficult for Conor. We've seen 2 guys come back from this injury, Corey Hill and Anderson Silva. It's a very tough injury. Then he's going to move up a weight class. Then he's had 5 years off. Conor's really up against it. That left hand is very real. To what you said earlier, that's someone Ian has always looked up to. Ian used to copy Conor's phrases. He used to coin him, and that's a hard thing to fight your idol.